Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you a fairly new feature that came out in Rise that I think is pretty awesome. Now, I wish it would have been out a long time ago, but I'll take it now. And I wanted to explore kind of the ins and outs of what I've been playing around with, some things that work really well, some things that are kind of wish list for me as well. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up a project. Now, this is just a sample project inside of Rise, and I'm going to go into a blank page here. So I have just 2 pages, just staying safe online, and I'm going to go ahead and click on Edit Content. Now we have our normal blocks here where we can start to build rows and in different blocks with like flashcards and interactions like accordions and other things like that. But there is a new custom block, and this block allows you to pretty much lay it out similar to a storyline page. So you can go in and you can build it out. You can add different images and audio files and other things like that. And in the future, it will add interactivity. I almost see it like being able to build a storyline page inside of Rise. Now, you still can build a storyline page and then bring it inside of Rise, but this allows you to build it right inside of Rise without having to export it to Storyline and link it up that way. So let's go ahead and dive in here into the block library. And this is where we see our new custom block. Now, this is still a beta version, so they're still working some things out here as well, but you can fully use it in whatever courses that you're working with at the moment. And there's some things to keep in mind that as you're working with it, that it's going to react and adapt a little bit differently. So we're going to talk about all that. So I'm going to just dive in and expand this out here. And there's different types of blocks that we can add. We can add a blank block. We can add a comparison, conversation, core concept, diagram, introduction, and more. Now, these different types of blocks are basically the blank block already built out for you. So you just go in and you swap out some content or you swap out an image, but it's just a blank block. And so they're just basically have done some of the work for you, and you can just start from that template. We're going to start from a blank block, and then we'll explore some of the template blocks here in a second. So I'm going to go into the blank block here, and this will pull up a custom block. On the surface, it looks like a normal block, and I don't actually edit anything inside of this view. In order to edit something, I have to go into the block and edit it, and I'll get a lot of the controls inside of that editing area. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Create Custom Block. But before I do, I still have my style where I can add different color themes and backgrounds and stuff like that. And I still have my format where I can add the padding. I can have the max content go to the canvas width. I can have it large and so forth. Now with the custom block, from what I've done here, it doesn't actually make a difference if you have that go to the max width or what. It pretty much stays at the size that you created, and we'll talk about that. But let's go into create the custom block here. So I'm going to click on create custom block. Now we have a little bit of a different view here. We have initially some templates that we can start with. So we have some conversation templates, we have tip templates, we have pyramid templates, we have text and image templates, we have human response templates, we have mission templates, things like that. These are already kind of like if you're building something inside a storyline and you started with one of those templates. You can start with one of those templates, then pretty much design it however you want from there. But let's just start with a blank one. And over on the left-hand side, we can do that by adding some text, which we have our heading 2, heading 3, and so forth. We also have shapes that we can add just like we can with Storyline. We have images, so we can go ahead and just generate an image with AI. We can go into the stock library, or we can upload our own image. Same thing with video. So we can upload video here, and if we wanted to preserve the quality, we can do that. We can upload audio, or we can generate audio like text to speech inside of here, record our own audio right inside of Rise, or upload audio as well. And then we have objects. Now, objects are basically stacking. So it allows us, similar to the timeline inside of Rise, allows us to move things up and move things back so we can have things stack on top of each other here. And then this is where it says coming soon, which I'm hoping really soon, but this will add interactivity. Now, I'm assuming based on some stuff that Articulate in the past at user conferences have kind of alluded to, that it will be allow us to create variables and triggers and similar things that we could do inside of Storyline. So that is pretty cool. I'm excited for that because that's one of the things that sometimes when I'm building a project, I still tend to go to Storyline most of the time. And the reason why is because Storyline can handle that variables. They can handle the triggers, they can handle the custom layouts and things like that. So if Rise is able to do that through these custom blocks, then why not use Rise for that kind of thing? So I'm still, Rise I use when it's needed for something quick and easy, but if they are adding interactivity like that, I'm all game for that. Now, if you come into here under like any type of block here, let's just go ahead and add a shape. It will add a shape, and then there's this editing bar that shows up depending on what you actually have selected. I'm going to add a title too. So this is where you can then come in and drag this and rearrange this however you want. Now, like I mentioned, depending on what you have selected, this toolbar will show up differently. And you can see that we have different options, like we can change the font, we can change, okay, if it's just a heading 2, heading 3, we can change the font size, we can change the text color, the highlight, bold, and all of the normal text editing kind of capabilities that you've seen in the past. But we can also center the text where we can left align, we can right align the text as well within the text box. We can align it compared to something else, like if I hold shift down, then I can go ahead and align to the middle, I can align to the left, similar things that you would expect to see in something like Storyline. But we can also come in here and add spacing. So if I want to have spacing within the object, certain kind of padding and margins and other things like that, I can do that here. I can also come in and add transparency, or opacity here. So if I select opacity, I can make things look a little bit more transparent. Now, if I come in here to the position, this is also another way to get into the position up on top here. I think if you go to the position here, it really doesn't select or do anything unless you select 2 items. And I'm thinking it just actually selects, now that I'm playing with this, it aligns whatever's to here, which doesn't really make a difference there. But if you click on position and select 2 objects here, let's go into position, then we can both left align them. Another thing, if you have 2 objects selected, is you can actually group them together. So now when I move this one object, both objects actually move together. So if you're creating like a card component with an image and some text below or something like that, and you wanted those to move together, you can group them together. Now, if you did not want to accidentally move something, you can lock that. So if I come up here and I click on this lock button, now I don't accidentally move it unless I specifically come in here and unlock it. I can also copy it. So if I come in here or duplicate it, whatever object or group that I had selected, I can go ahead and duplicate it and use that over and over. So with that in mind, we're able to create very custom layouts. We're able to use shapes similar to what we've done inside a Storyline and images and other things like that to create a custom layout. Now here is the caveat. When you actually preview this inside of the Rise experience itself, it doesn't actually become responsive. That is one of the biggest benefits to Rise, is the fact that it is responsive. So whatever content and interaction that you filled out, it adapts. It changes to the screen size. This is still mobile viewable, but it's actually not mobile responsive, because responsive is basically meaning that it will adapt and it will change depending on the size. So I want to show you that. So you can click on preview up on top. Doesn't make much of a difference, but I can't make actually any changes here. But if I come into the regular block, so if I click the arrow back button, I'm then going to click on preview from here. And this is where we have our different preview sizes. So we have our desktop, we have our tablet portrait, tablet landscape, and so forth. For most sizes, this actually doesn't matter. So if I come in here and I see this, okay, with tablet portrait, that still looks great. Tablet landscape, that's still doable as well. Mobile landscape, a little bit more squished there, but it's still doable. And then this is where you can go into mobile portrait, and that's where it starts to get really small. Because just like Storyline, it basically takes that and it kind of shrinks that down. So it's not responding, it's not adapting to the size. It's basically just allows you to lay the page out how you want and then have it change that way. So there are a couple strategies to make sure that this still looks good on mobile. And let's go ahead and talk about that. One thing is you can actually come into the edit, or you can come, let's go back into the preview here. So one thing you could do is you can come into the edit and then you can go into the edit block. So let's go into the edit content. And this is where we can change the size. If you select your stage size, this is where you can change the size of your stage. So if you don't need the entire layout, you can start to move your objects a little bit closer together. And then you select the stage and you can just resize it so it's a little bit closer together depending on your content. Now, this may, depending on the type of content that you're working with, it may work out or you may need the larger size. It just also, I think it's useful to know how your learners are taking this course. If your learners are taking the course, or most of the time they're taking learning through a desktop device, then it doesn't really matter. You can just go in and use this and know that people are going to be able to view it. But if you do know that your learners are taking content through the phone, or the majority of them are taking the content through the phone, then that's where you would probably want to spend a little bit more time to make this smaller, because watch what happens here. If I go back now, you can see that it centers the content. So we still have our padding on the left and right, but it centers the content. And the reason why this is helpful, because if I come into preview now, it will still center the content and it looks great on desktop. It looks great on tablet portrait. It looks great on tablet landscape. It looks great on mobile portrait. So it doesn't take up that full size. And so it's not shrinking it as much, basically. So if you can go ahead and just make that really small. In fact, if you come in here and make this even smaller, let's go ahead and just get rid of one of the pieces of content here. And I'm going to add some text. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and just delete this real quick. And I'm going to come in here and add some text here. Let's just do a page text here. And we'll say sample page. And then let's move that up here to the top. And then we're going to insert some text, like a paragraph text here. And I'm going to insert, or just put this right below. Now I'm going to just make this, I can't really stretch it height-wise, but I can stretch it width-wise. And I'm going to make this stage size a little bit more. I'm going to get it down to almost like 500 here. So around 500, that's good enough for now. So let's go ahead and center this again. And now I'm going to generate some sample text here. So I'm going to come in and select that text and then click on the AI writer here. Now in the AI writer, this is where I want to say, give me 2 paragraphs about avoiding phishing attempts. For now, just the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and just replace that content. And again, this is beta. It kind of threw me off to the side a little bit. I'm not sure why. But then you can see here that it's now stretched that, or given me a little bit more text here. I want to make sure that that goes up a little bit. Okay, so now if I go back to Rise, you can see it's a little bit small here. So on desktops, it may be a little bit small, but it's a little stylish. So I can add like a background or something like that. But if I go into portraits, mobile portrait, the text is more readable that way because I kept that width a lot smaller. Because what would happen is if I make this a lot bigger, going back into my edit mode, I'm going to just make this really big. I'm going to stretch this text out here. Let's just copy and paste it just so we can see more text here. And I think that font size was a little bit small. Let's just have it like that. Okay, and then I'm going to center this. So position, center. Now let's go back here. And it looks great on desktop, but if I come into the preview mode and then go into mobile portrait, this is where it gets really small. So if you're using text and it's just text, then I would probably stick with the text block inside of Rise because that adapts and it changes. But if you're wanting a very custom layout, keep in mind the width. How much width do you actually want to use? Because if your learners are taking this on mobile, you don't want to go too wide, or else it's going to basically shrink the content. So it's a really cool block. I like the block, and I like the fact that they did it, and I like the fact that they're heading towards being able to add variables and conditions and other things like that inside of Rise, because it is very much needed inside of Rise to really be able to be something that I use all the time kind of thing, at least for me. So I like that fact here. Now, before we close out here, I definitely want to cover some of the templates because some of the templates are designed to be a little bit wider. Some of the templates are actually designed to be mobile friendly. So if I come in here and then let's go ahead and add a new block so I can stack these blocks on top of each other. So I'm going to click on block library. And now let's go in and click on comparison. If I click on comparison, this is where it gives me a couple different layouts here. So let's do a myth versus fact here. So it adds that block. Now, how do I handle the spacing between this? Well, there's a couple different ways that I could do that. If I go back into my text block, I do have some spacing below that text that I'm not actually using. So this is probably where I'd want to come in here and just make it a little bit smaller. Add a little bit of spacing between the text and that, but not as much, and that will push it back up. Again, when you're working with custom blocks, the white space, kind of that blank space, is important because it will push out additional content or it'll bring up additional content. So it is something to keep in mind. Now you can always add your own spacing if you wanted top and bottom. You can add more spacing if you needed to there. All right, so with this one in mind, let's go ahead and go into the content here. Now notice here, and this is by going into the different templates, it really allows you to see what Articulate has done and how they recommend to build these types of custom blocks because they're not using much padding on top and bottom or any padding on top and bottom at all. They are using just a little bit on the sides. So it doesn't have to be that full size. Use whatever your content is actually requiring here in order to make this really react how you want it or in the best situation overall. So now I can come in here and you'll notice that it's grouped, and these are essentially just shapes. Now inside of those shapes allow you to edit text. That is one thing I did not cover, but if you add a shape here, you can actually just type in text, which you can do inside a storyline. So to me, that's just the same, but that does allow you to actually center the text. And I think that's where we can then get into like the right align, left align, the middle, the bottom. That's within the object itself. This position is relative to the stage or relative to other objects here. So that is just one way that all I have to do is basically come in, change the text here. I can come in and I can change the color. So coming up to the top, I can change the color of the shape. I can change the corner radius. I can add a drop shadow if I wanted to add a drop shadow here. So there's a little bit of a drop shadow, and then I can define the drop shadow there. I can add the overlay if I wanted there to be an overlay on this, which will then just kind of add a transparent color on top of the actual color. If you wanted to have an overlay, you can, but it just depends. I think if it's an image, an overlay works great. In fact, I want to add an image and just show you that. So let's go in and just grab a random stock image. And I'm not sure if it added there. Let's go ahead and insert. So this is where an overlay really can come into play. So if you click on overlay and then you click here, notice how it starts to have that color transparency. That's an overlay. It doesn't change the background color if it's just a solid color. It kind of adds a transparent overlay to it. And that's really where you can get like this faded image background, which is really cool. So let's go in and explore a couple more blocks here. So I'm going to delete this one. And so I'm going to go back into my block here. And so let's come in here and just say, let's do like a persona one. So you can see right here, this persona. And this one's a little bit different because this one is definitely designed for mobile. If I come in here and click on preview, and then you can see that it looks great on desktop, and we have our image, we have up on top, we have our text, we have audio down at the bottom here. But if I go into mobile portrait, that looks great. Compared to our text above here, this looks great. So that's what I'm talking about is if you do know that your learners take your content on a mobile device, then you want to make sure that you target the size to mobile devices as well. And again, if it's just text and image, you probably can get away with that, which is the regular block. This is more for custom specific design type of layouts here. All right, so I'm going to go back here. So this one, I could just come into my content. I could swap out the image with an AI image. I can swap out or just change the text. I can change the background shape here. Anything on the background shape, you can see that you can drag the radius. if you wanted it not as rounded here. You don't really need to worry about margin and padding inside of here because that can be handled on the block level and not necessarily inside of this custom area. So go ahead and spend some time taking a look at other blocks. It really will help you see how Articulate has designed and how they have basically used this custom block to create different types of custom layouts. It is not perfect for every situation, I'll give you that. It is not going to be ideal for all different types. I wouldn't use this for every single type of block. But when it comes down to just creating a certain type of custom comparison, or like an image with an overlay with some overlapping shape or something like that, if you wanted a very custom type of layout like that, it may be perfect for you. So it does come in handy. It's something very useful as well. One of my kind of wish lists would be to be able to generate, using an AI prompt, to be able to generate a custom block, similar to what you do with like Lovable or Cursor, where you can just say, I want an image with this, this, and this. I'm hoping that Rise just gets there in general, but this, again, is a nice, handy tool to be able to create custom layouts. If you like this video, head on over to my YouTube channel, click the like button, subscribe to my channel, as well as hit the bell notification so you get notified of all future videos as they come out. That really helps my channel, allows me to continue to grow, allows me to continue to provide this content for you to really become the best learning developer that you can be. Also, you can check out my website at learningdojo.ninja. Here I have a bunch of new apps that you can check out, like Checklist and Tasks, GSAP animation tool, Dream Crusher as well. I have courses, full courses covering everything from A to Z in Articulate Storyline 360, JavaScript and Storyline, XAPI fundamentals, Articulate Rise, custom SCORM as well. I create a weekly blog that you can check out, all tips and tricks on various different aspects of e-learning development. And then also I have free templates that you can download inside of Storyline. That's all I have for today, so thanks everyone, and I'll see you next time.